I have already related the value of tradition. Parliamentary procedures, Madam Chair, grow from or are enriched by traditions, experiences, and precedents collectively gathered by the House of Representatives over years, and the institution keeps them well. That is why, from my entry in 2004 or the 13th Congress until today, I have observed the observance of that well-kept tradition. The two highest positions in government, namely the office of the President and the office of the Vice President, were duly accorded with respect and deference. I have observed that. That's why I have relayed to you earlier, in 2022, the Honorable Libanan, invoking courtesy, took him only 13 minutes to dispose the office of the Vice President. And that was quickly moved, quickly seconded by no less than our majority leader. That was in 2022. I'm not going by record, Madam Chair. 2023, I said, no less than the presidential son, our own senior deputy majority leader, stood up and said that in line with the time-honored tradition of according courtesy to the office of the Vice President, I move to terminate the budget briefing of the OBP.
I just wish to make a very short manifestation on the issue earlier. This representation could not relate to the cherished and long-standing tradition because this is the first term of this representation. Nonetheless, I understand that by that tradition, we're supposed to extend parliamentary courtesy, and by which we're not supposed to raise questions on the budget of the OVP. However, Madam Chair, I wish to ask the committee, if we will be always submitting to this tradition, what happens to the constitutional provision on public office is a public trust, and that we should always be accountable to the people. When this representation differ to the wisdom of the senior members, I wish to manifest that I, and I hope along with the new breed of legislators, are inclined to honor the tradition, contrary to the manifestation of the Honorable Marcoleta. However, Madam Chair, what happens if the tradition is not sufficient? What happens if the tradition is not effective? What happens if the tradition does not unite and instead it divides? Let us all remember that in all parliamentary proceedings, the majority always rule. And it is on this light that I wish to commend the chair for immediately proceeding to the division of the House. And when the committee voted for no, it has rendered the issue yes, moot and academic. And I concede to the Honorable Garin that even this representation disregard this rule. That is a manifestation, Madam Chair.
What is now the status of the notice of disallowance issued to the office of the Vice President?
Madam Chair, we have issued the notice of disallowance, and it was received by management on August 9, 2024. So they still have 6 months po, or 180 days
Correct.
to appeal for the
And
disallowance.
they are supposed to reply yet.
Yes po.
You will have to give them the opportunity to make a reply.
That is correct
To
po,
explain
Madam Chair. Yes po, Madam
how
Chair.
the budget was utilized.
Opo.
And that is part of due process.
That is correct po.
Meaning to say, there is no guilt yet until and unless you are able to receive the reply, the answer, and the explanation of the office of the Vice President.
That is correct po. And it has
Have you received a copy?
of the reply po.
Yes.
They have not yet replied po
So
to the
yun na nga eh. As part of the due process is notice. And the Vice President will submit to you an answer explaining, detailing how the budget was utilized. And you will receive that.
Understanding that he's questioning the position of COA for disclosing the notice of disallowance, considering that the OVP has not yet filed its answer. I just wish to manifest, Madam Chair, that the filing of an answer or appeal, as the more appropriate term, is not mandatory. Instead, it is the discretion of the OVP. As a matter of fact, if the OVP fails to file an appeal, it renders the disallowance final and executory. Otherwise, if they file an appeal, there's a possibility for reversal. And be that as it may, Madam Chair, this representation does not see any issue why the COA should not disclose the notice of disallowance. Let us all be reminded by the constitutionally guaranteed right of the citizens to public information on matters concerning public interest. And even assuming that after the filing of an appeal, the notice of disallowance was reversed, the COA has all the liberty to disclose to the public that they were wrong in issuing the ND, and that later on the OVP was able to justify the basis for the issuance of the ND. So to conclude, Madam Chair, the filing of an answer or an appeal, as a more appropriate term, is not mandatory. Instead, it is discretionary. If the OVP files an appeal, then she has a chance to reverse the decision in the ND. Otherwise, if they opt not to file an appeal, then the ND becomes final and executory. Thank you, Madam Chair.